All right, hello third graders, Miss Seals here. Very excited for our first science lab of the new school year. Of course, it looks a little bit different. You guys are at home learning, so for these few weeks, I'll be doing videos and a little demonstration of an experiment for you. You'll still be making a hypothesis and writing about your observations and talking about what you've learned. And then hopefully once we come back in a couple weeks, you guys will get to come into the science lab and actually do the experiment with me. All right, so this week we are starting off by talking about science safety. So your target says, I can demonstrate safe practices such as using safety equipment as appropriate, including safety goggles. So for this experiment, when it's time, I will be putting on safety goggles so that I don't get hurt. If you guys were in lab with me, you would be putting on safety goggles too. You don't have to put safety goggles on at home because you're just going to be watching, all right? So before I continue, I want to talk about a big word that should sound familiar to you. We've used this word in science lab before, and this word is hypothesis. Can everyone say hypothesis? Very good. A hypothesis is a prediction or an educated guess about what you think will happen in an experiment. We did talk about this word when you guys were in first kindergarten. Before a scientist does an experiment, they make a prediction about what they think is going to happen. But notice I put an educated guess. It's not just a random guess. It's a guess where you think about your background knowledge, you think about things you've already seen or done or other experiments you've done before, and you use that information to make your hypothesis or your prediction. So in just a couple minutes, you guys will be making a hypothesis too. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain the experiment, show you what materials I'll be using, show you how it's going to work, and then I'm going to give you time to make your hypothesis. Then you'll come back to the video, watch the experiment, and then you will be writing your observations and what you noticed during the experiment, okay? So whenever a scientist does an experiment, they always follow what's called the scientific process, or you may have heard it called the scientific method. And this is a list of steps that a scientist follows when doing an experiment. So step number 1 in the scientific process is to ask a question. And this gives you your purpose or your reason for doing the experiment. This tells you what you're trying to find out by doing this experiment. Step number 2 is the hypothesis, which I just talked about and you'll be doing in a second. Step number 3 is to do the experiment. Step number 4 is when you collect your data. Data is another word meaning information. So this is where you take the information that you got from your experiment. Maybe you compile it into a chart, a table, a graph, some kind of organized way so that you can then use your data to write a conclusion. A conclusion is when you write and you talk about what did you learn from the experiment? What is the data telling us? Or in other words, what is the answer to the question that we asked at the beginning of the experiment? All right, so we'll be talking more about this year. Whenever we do an experiment or an investigation, we will be following these steps. All right, so the way that this experiment today is going to work, the question that we're asking is, do Skittles dissolve faster in hot water or cold water? So what I'm going to be doing, and in a second, I'm going to be putting on goggles because remember our target is to practice being safe in the science lab. Since I'm going to be using hot water, I'm going to be putting on goggles because I do not want to get hot water in my eyes. Even the cold water, I don't know if it's really clean. I don't want to get that in my eyes either. So in a second, I'll be putting on goggles. I'm going to have hot water. I'm going to have cold water. I'm going to drop Skittles into the water at the same time. And we're going to let it sit for a couple of minutes, and you're going to be watching carefully and observing what's happening. Make sure you're paying attention because at the end, you're going to go back and be writing your observations. Now, I want to talk about one word that I just mentioned, which is the word dissolve. Okay, we are seeing if Skittles dissolve faster in hot water or cold water. Dissolve does not mean to melt. Dissolve does not mean to disappear. When something dissolves, that means it breaks down into tiny, tiny pieces and completely and evenly spreads out and distributes in the water. An example of dissolving that you're probably the most familiar with is when you make Kool-Aid, right? You have your water, you have your Kool-Aid mix, you pour it in, you stir it up, and the Kool-Aid mix dissolves. It doesn't disappear, it doesn't melt, it's still there. We can see it because the water has changed color, we can smell it, we can taste it. It's still there, but it is broken up into such tiny pieces and completely and evenly distributed in the water. All right, that's a dissolving. So, all right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put my goggles on. I'll set up the experiment and then I will give you time to do your hypothesis. All right, goggles are on. I am being safe. Remember, that is our target today. We are demonstrating safe practices such as using safety equipment as appropriate, including safety goggles. So what that means is you don't have to wear safety goggles for every experiment or investigation you do, but when you are doing one where there is something that could hurt you or hurt your eyes or get into your eyes, then it's important to use safety goggles. I don't want to get water in my eyes, like I said. All right. So here is, I have 2 cards so that you will know which one is my hot water and which one is my cold water. All right. So make it so you can see. There's my hot water. There's my cold water. All right, here's the cold. I just took it out of the refrigerator right before I started this video. And then here's my warm water. It's been heated up in my little kettle, tea kettle. Ooh, it's hot. And I'm making sure that I'm using, let me pour a little bit back because I got a little too much. We need to make sure we are using the same amount of both types of water. When we do an experiment, we have to make sure that we only have one variable. A variable is what changes in an experiment. To have a reliable and accurate experiment, you can only have one variable. Okay, our variable in this experiment is the temperature of the water. One is hot, one is cold. Everything else is going to be the same. We're using the same amount of water. We're even going to be using the same color and size of Skittle. The reason that you can only have one variable in an experiment is because if you have more than one, your results will not be accurate. So what I mean by that is if we do this experiment and we find out that the Skittle in the cold water dissolves faster, but the cold water Skittle is blue and the hot water Skittle is red, we don't know if the cold water really and truly dissolves Skittles faster or if blue Skittles just dissolve faster than red Skittles. We don't know because we would have more than one variable. That's why we can only have one variable at a time. In this one, it's the temperature of the water. All right, so before I start the experiment, this is the time when you're going to make your hypothesis. So listen carefully to what you're going to do because I want you to do 2 things. When I'm finished with my directions, you are going to pause the video. You're going to go back into Schoology where you found this video, and there's a spot that says discussion post. In there, you're going to put 2 things. Number 1, you're going to make your hypothesis. So you're going to tell me what you think is going to happen in this experiment. You could start your sentence with, I think the Skittle in the blank water will dissolve faster because, so you could either say, I think the Skittle in the hot water will dissolve faster because, and then explain your thinking, or I think the Skittle in the cold water will dissolve faster because, and then explain your thinking. Okay, make sure you explain why. So again, think back. When have you seen something dissolve in cold water before? When have you seen something dissolve in hot water before? That's using your background knowledge and thinking about your experiences to help you make an educated guess. All right. Then after you make your hypothesis, you're going to respond to a classmate's hypothesis. You can say things like, I agree with you. You could say things like, I wonder why, or I wonder if. Please make sure your responses are appropriate, respectful, and on topic. All right, so you're going to pause the video, you're going to make your hypothesis and respond to a friend's hypothesis, and then you are going to come back to this video and press play for the experiment. Got it? All right, see you in a second. All right, you've made your hypothesis. It is time for us to do the experiment. So again, in just a second, I'm going to be putting a Skittle in each of these. Your job is to watch carefully and observe and notice and think about what is happening and which one is dissolving faster. I'm not going to set a timer. We're just going to watch them, and then when I say stop, we'll see which one has dissolved the most. All right? And ready, set, go. All right. I'm looking. I'll hold the cups up for you in just a second so you can see. Let me turn it. Maybe that'll help. Ooh, I already noticed something about this one. I can tell that the water's already starting to turn blue. Some of the color's already starting to come off of the blue Skittle in the hot water. I see a little bit of blue in this water, but not as much. Wow, look at this. The hot water Skittle is already completely white. All of the color has come off of it. It's dissolved into the water. Look at the cold water Skittle, still blue. Very interesting. Keep watching. Ooh, I just saw a big piece break off of this one and float to the top. Let's keep watching and see which one is dissolving faster. Make sure you're paying attention and thinking about what you're seeing, because you're going to be writing in just a second 3 sentences to tell me what you noticed and what you observed in this experiment. Wow. Can already tell the hot water one is getting a lot smaller. The cold water one hasn't really changed much at all. A little bit of the color has come off, but not all of it. And it still looks to be about the same size as it was when I put it in there. The hot water one is getting much, much smaller. And watch them for a couple more minutes. Make sure you're thinking about what's happening. All right, we'll go about 30 more seconds. Look at the difference. Look at the hot water one. Very tiny. Cold water one. Almost the same size. Look how much of the blue has come off of this one compared to this one. Wow. Pretty interesting. All right, a little bit longer. A little bit longer. Wow, can you see the pieces breaking off of this one and floating? Ooh, oops. Floating up to the top. It's dissolving quickly. All right. I'm going to leave them, and in just a second after I give these directions, I'm going to show you one more time. This is what you're going to do when the video ends. When the video ends, you're going to go back into Schoology, and there's a spot for an assessment. This isn't for a grade. It's just for practice. And I would like for you to write 3 sentences about what you observed in this experiment. So remember, our question was, do Skittles dissolve faster in hot water or cold water? So that's the question that you're answering. So your first sentence could be, The Skittle dissolved faster in definitely the hot water, right? Look at that. It's almost completely gone. It's super tiny. Okay, and then you're going to tell me 2 more sentences about what you observed. What did you see? Did the water change color quickly in the hot water? Did it change color slowly? Did you see pieces breaking off? Did the Skittle get smaller? Did the Skittle change shape? Did the Skittle change size? All of those things are observations. Anything that you noticed and saw during this experiment that was happening to the Skittle is an observation, okay? So I'm going to quickly show these to you one more time, and then I will end this video. So here's what they look like now. We can see that can you see that? There we go. Can see that the color has come off the one in the cold water now. And I'm gonna see if I can show you the sizes. Can you see the sizes of the Skittles? Here, let me show you from a different angle. Let me move these. Be easier for you to see. Can you see what sizes the Skittles are now? I noticed that the one in the hot water is smaller than the one in the cold water. I noticed that I can still see bubbles coming up and pieces breaking off of it. Okay. All right. So you're going back into Schoology, telling me 3 sentences about what you observed during this observation. Notice how I am still wearing my safety goggles. Remember that our target was to demonstrate and show how to be safe during a science experiment. My goggles are still on because my materials are not put away yet. Once my materials are put away, I can safely take off my goggles. All right, I hope you guys had fun. I miss you. I hope you're doing well. I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.